Well, voting for the 2024 presidential elections has closed in 6 U.S. states in the bitterly contested election between Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris and the Republican former President Donald Trump, including in the key battleground state of Georgia. Now, voting has been continuing largely smoothly across the United States on Tuesday, except for a few reports of delays, technical problems, and printing errors. Additionally, a few hoax calls caused some disturbances for a short time, but voting resumed without much delay. There are 538 electoral college votes allotted to the 50 states and the District of Columbia, and it takes 270 electoral college votes to win this election. Well, we have some preliminary results or projections by different networks from various sources, and the results are being continuously updated as additional poll responses are being gathered. Now, Donald Trump has been projected to win in Florida with 30 electoral college votes there, Alabama with 9, Missouri 10, Oklahoma 7, Tennessee 11, West Virginia 4, Indiana 11, Kentucky 8, South Carolina 9, Mississippi 6, Arkansas 6, Nebraska 5, North Dakota 3, South Dakota 3, Louisiana 8, Wyoming 3, Ohio 17, Texas 40 is also leading in Montana, Utah, Pennsylvania. Well, Kamala Harris has picked up the District of Columbia, which has 3. That's where Washington, D.C. is. And Maryland 10, Massachusetts 11, Vermont 3, Connecticut 7, Illinois 19, Rhode Island 4, New Jersey 14 seats, electoral college votes, and Delaware 3. New York has 28, which she is projected to win, and Colorado with 10. Well, we can see here, this is how some of the agencies are portraying the current position. ABC says that Trump has 178 electoral college votes already, CBS 178, NBC 201, Fox has gone up to 205, CNN is at 172, Edison at 178, the Associated Press at 198, and DDHQ at 226, and while Harris is at 91, 81, 81, 117, 81, 91, 109, and 108. This is as things stand. Of course, the entire blue wall has yet to be counted, so Harris can look forward to getting a lot more votes. So even though projections have started pouring in, people might not know the outcome unless, unless, of course, any one of the duo scores a significant victory in most of the states, especially the swing states of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan. If there are no blowout margins of victory and the election numbers follow the polls, all of which give leads within the margin of error, then with crucial swing states, Pennsylvania as narrow as 0.4% for Trump, it may take a few days or even weeks to sort out the contested results with recounts. And former diplomat Neelam Dev is joining us, co-founder of Gateway House, joins us from Mumbai. Ms. Dev, how do you view the results currently? There seem to be, of course, most of the red states have been counted, very few blue states from the blue wall. But so far, the Republicans have a very clear advantage, and they're also leading in terms of the popular vote.
That's right. But I think it's clear that most of the states, which is sort of in the heartland of the United States, these are more rural than the urban states, urbanized states, which favor Democrats. It's easier for these heartland states to declare their results faster, slightly smaller populations in most of them, and so the count goes more easily. I think there's no question that if, for instance, along with Florida and Texas, the result in California and New York was also added in, the two candidates would be more neck and neck.
Yes.
So I think we really have to just wait for results in what are blue states to come in. And of course, most importantly, if any of the battleground states are flipped by the Republicans, then that will give us some important indications and will give the Democrats more to worry about than Republicans.
Right, indeed. And of course, the voting has taken place from East Coast to West Coast, and the counting is also taking place that way. So California will be towards the end when we'll get the results from the entire blue wall. But if we look at this election otherwise, how would you see that, the manner in which the Americans have come out to vote? They've come out in large numbers, and the issues have been the economy, abortion, democracy was one of the issues, immigration is another issue. How would you view, they had some polls earlier about the types of issues, and people had said that the issue of the economy was top on their mind. The issue of democracy was also top on their mind. Then the issue of abortion was also there. The question is, when you have all these issues, one is not sure what issue is being voted upon. So how would you gauge who's voting on what? That's my question.
So I think, there have been like hundreds of polls and with slightly different outcomes here and there. As far as I'm concerned, a few big takeaways. One is that the deep divisions in American society are reflected in the way what are traditional red states, how they have voted, and how the blue states are expected to have voted. We will see whether that applies to many of the traditional blue states and what happens in the swing states. But there's no question that American society is deeply divided and is not at all open to exchanges of opinions, views, information with the other side, partly because of the way social media enables citizens to live within the media bubbles from where they pick up their information. That's one very important aspect.
Right.
The other is, of course, that for everybody, red, blue, whoever, day-to-day issues are top of the table. You have to be concerned with cost of living, even though unemployment has gone down to just 4%, which is itself an achievement in the United States. And inflation has been arrested. But arrested doesn't mean that the earlier price rise has been pulled back. So there's no question that food, for example, or cars or mortgages cost more than they cost 3-4 years ago, pre-pandemic, shall we say. So it is inevitable that the government in power will be blamed for the fact that prices have increased, even though they have stopped increasing now. And in a couple of cases, like fuel, like gas, as the Americans say, has actually been going down. Now, many of these issues are, of course, out of the hands of the government or the president. The war in the Middle East, that sort of issue it is expected that the American government would have exerted itself more to deal with the trauma that the Middle East war has been causing, but it's not entirely in their hands. On the other hand, some issues which are exceedingly important to different age groups, environmental issues for the young, the abortion and Supreme Court composition related issues for women. These will also be reflected in how the voting goes in other states as the results come in, and particularly in the swing states. The fact that more older women are expected to go out and vote for Kamala Harris, the fact that younger men below 40, including many from the African American community, the Hispanic community, even the Indo American community, are leaning towards the Republicans. A lot of these differences of opinion will actually get reflected in the swing states and could determine the outcome of the election.
What weightage would you give to the personality cult surrounding Donald Trump? I mean, after all, he is a divisive figure. There are either people who love him or hate him. And, in his first term, he had clearly marked out the media as the opposition party, and he had created the concept of, he started talking about the concept of fake news and created a narrative which also helped the growth of social media. And we can see that social media has played a very significant role in this election. And you did talk about, each within their own sort of echo chambers. To what extent do you think, the personality of Trump has affected this election?
I think there is a view that he has a high ceiling of support. 45% of Americans support Donald Trump no matter what. They supported him for the 2016 election, they supported him in the 2020 election, and it looks like most of them have supported him in this election. The question really is whether he has been able to increase the number of his supporters, and whether undecided voters, which is maybe 1% of the electorate, will swing this way or that way. That he is a divisive figure is also the way the media characterizes him, because you could equally take the position that Kamala Harris, a woman of color, of half Indian origin and half African American or Jamaican origin, all these, misogyny, the gender issues, these are also divisive factors in the United States. So I think it's not appropriate to try and understand the divisions in society by attributing them all to Donald Trump,
right.
who
Sure.
has a strong base of support. But what will determine the outcome of this election is whether he can increase his support among the men who anyway support him, and whether undecided voters choose to come out and vote at all, and if they do come out, whether they lean Republican or Democrat.
Right. We're also joined by our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh, who's standing outside, who's in Washington, D.C. And the District of Columbia has already been declared for the Democrats, for Kamala Harris. Shubhendu, we are seeing that, at least the blue states seem to be slower in counting than the red, because after all, the blue wall is on the West Coast. Even though there is some euphoria about, the Republicans already crossing 207 and Kamala Harris only at 91, it's not yet a done race, isn't it?
Absolutely, Mark. We have to look at the projections for what they are, projections, and we have to see the states and the regions where Donald Trump is getting those electoral votes. They're mostly red states, so red continues to be red, and blue is yet to become blue. It's somewhat of a pattern like that. And swing states still continue to be at the heart of what might decide the outcome of this presidential elections. I also want to tell you at the location where I am. I'm right outside Howard University. This is the alma mater of Vice President Kamala Harris. This is where she's going to be tonight to see the manner in which the countings progress. There are hundreds of her supporters, students, alumni of the university who've been pouring in. They've all sort of gone inside. They've all settled down. Vice President would be joining them, and together, what is a tradition of an election night of watching the results unfold together with your supporters is something that's going to happen at this a place which is very, very memorable and close to Vice President Kamala Harris. And here the institution also is looking forward to finding out if the already very illustrious alumni, the Vice President, could in fact become the first woman President of United States of America.
Right, we can see there are quite a few TV crews behind you, Shubhendu, but you know, you've had a long day, so put it into context for us. An election day in the United States, what's it like? I mean, after all, there was a huge campaign, there was a lot of early voting, and then there are people, I suppose, who wait for the election day traditionally. In fact, Donald Trump is calling only for the election day to be the day on which people should vote. He says that's the fair process. So, I mean, what's your assessment about how the Americans have handled the election day?
That's a very interesting question, Mark, and I would say there's almost a mix of feelings that I've experienced through the early voting to the election day. And to this time here, it's a festive sort of a climate. There's a lot of music playing. There are a lot of food courts. Youngsters have come all dressed up as if for a weekend party. They're going to be here with their very illustrious alumni, Kamala Harris, for the counting day. We saw in the early voting there was a degree of urgency in the voters to be done with their duty and look forward to the election day. On the election day, we saw in the run-up to it anxiety, tension, how will it pan out, so much focus on security arrangement that was quite unprecedented. The elections, at least in Washington, D.C., the polling booths that we were covering, we saw that it went quite smoothly. There was police sirens honking in the background to keep a check on any untoward incident. But by and large, the elections went smoothly. And now it just seems that everyone wants to have their hair down, hang their boots, and have a good time, really sit back and enjoy the counting. We yet to, the apprehensions that were there earlier, mostly related to what if Donald Trump lags behind in the early counting, what kind of reactions might come in from his supporters. Those concerns for now are put to rest. So it seems like the whole election mood has come full circle, from urgency to anxiety to tension to getting be done with it. And now more relaxed atmosphere prevails here. Mark?
Right. And when can we expect Kamala Harris to come to Howard University? And because after all, you know, the blue states have not really started counting, would she be waiting for that entire process to end before she comes?
That, as you mentioned, the West Coast is...
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. You, for a brief while we couldn't hear you,
Mark.
but now we can. Go ahead.
All right. So yes, we're also on standby to find that out. Hundreds of our supporters are all inside. Yes, West Coast voting has to conclude, and from there an update has to come. The initial trends have to come. But she would be here. This is the place where all the arrangements have been made. Very first time an election night is going to be celebrated in a manner at her alma mater, Harvard University here in Washington, D.C.
Right. Stay with us, Shubhendu. We also have senior diplomat Neelam Dev with us. Ma'am, so when we look at, you know, the outcomes of this election as they seem to be moving in a particular direction, let's just presume that it's a victory for Donald Trump. In what way should India be looking at, you know, this new government?
I think the Indian position has been enunciated by the External Affairs Minister more than once, and in fact will be the position of most governments except the Europeans, the NATO members. We work with whoever is elected, and in India particularly, since we we value our own democratic situation, we will go with the outcome of democracy, democratic voting in the United States. But obviously for the Europeans, with their how deeply they are invested in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, It is really, they are treating it almost as a life and death issue. They are very concerned that if President Trump comes in, will there be a change in the American position on NATO, on its support to Ukraine? So I think for some countries, it matters greatly who is elected. But for most of the world, and certainly for India, we are ready to work with whoever the democratic process yields in the United States. And also because it has been our experience in the past that the relationship, the Indo-US relationship, has deepened, it has intensified under both Democratic and Republican administrations.
A final word from you, Shubhendu. Now that things seem to be clear to some extent, you had already reported earlier that there was a lot of security being put up just in case a January 6th like incident took place again. Has any of that security been of any use today?
Well, it has induced a degree of confidence in the election machinery, in the poll officers who've been working so hard all day, for many days, in fact, to make sure that election day goes well. There was considerable security threats against polling booths, polling officers. In that sense, putting all those bulletproof glasses, drone surveillance had made sure that the very crucial day has passed off without any untoward incidents. And again, it's too early to call. We yet to get the final numbers, and we'll have to see the kind of reactions that come in from the supporters of the two sides. For now, Donald Trump seems to be getting all the numbers on his side, but these are again the red states from where he's scooping all the electoral college votes. So it just may be a little too early to also say that the election results are over and the tension one can put to rest, because but the numbers come in, it's the swing states where the main battleground of this election is. Those are also too early to call. So that's the concern, Mark. It'll be possible to answer that question once we have more trends coming in from the swing states, the blue states. So we see the entire picture, and so do the supporters, and we'll have to see how they react to it.
Right. Thanks very much, Shubhendu. You've had a long day. Thanks for being with us, and we'll come back to you when you do have more information for us. Thanks for being with us for the moment. Well, the Democrat Sarah McBride has become the first openly transgender person elected in the United States' House of Representatives, as per the Edison research, which projected on Tuesday, winning the election to Delaware's at-large seat. McBride, who is a 34-year-old state senator, won the competitive primary for Delaware's at-large congressional district, considered a safely Democratic seat, in September. And she became the first openly transgender person to serve as a state senator when she was elected in 2020, first to speak at a U.S. National Political Party convention in 2016, and the first to intern at the White House in 2012 under the Democratic former President Barack Obama. Right. Let's turn once again to Ambassador Dev. Ma'am, when we look at the other issues that seem to be in the U.S. society, there is the issue, of course, of abortion, but then there is the other issue of gender. And of course, there is the progressive stand that a lot of these things are the par for the course. Things are changing in society. And while the conservatives want to hold back on a lot of things because youngsters may be misinformed, especially about the transgender issues, and they don't want to encourage these things. How would you view American society? I mean, the blue states are moving in a particular direction, the red states are moving in a particular direction on this matter.
So I would say to you that American society might be more advanced on these issues than American politicians, especially Republican politicians. If you look back a few decades, American women got the vote really late in the last century. The American society was, at least politicians were viscerally against gay Americans. Gays in the army was a big issue for a while. All these are now settled issues. Even Republicans and Republican politicians support the rights of American gays. You have seen the immense advances that women have made in American society, in education, and that they are making even now in the corporate American society, where more and more women are becoming CEOs. There are sectors like, the IT sector, which are real sort of, bro sectors, as they call them, where not enough women have been able to move up. But I think society is advancing. You might recall that when President Obama was elected or was campaigning, it was felt that America may not be ready for a black man. But in fact, America not only elected Barack Obama twice to be president, but it has continued to embrace his legacy. So, is it an issue in America that to have a woman president? I think there will be some people in the American society who will be reticent on that. But I think broadly, American society is more liberal than perhaps American politicians are, who try to look for and make issues out of change that is happening in the country, in the society.
Very much, former diplomat Neelam Dev. Thank you, madam, for being with us and enlightening us on the election results in the United States, the presidential election as we receive them. Thank you for putting them into context for us. Next, the latest channel update is coming up on your screen. There you have it. These are the numbers that have come up, and we can see that DDHQ is given Donald Trump 242. We know that 270 is the number he has to reach to, claim the presidency for a second time. So, I mean, if that poll is correct, if they've called it right, then he's not far away. So these are the numbers that we were showing you on the screen. Clearly, of course, as Shubhendu was also telling us, and as we have been telling you, that it's moving from East Coast to West Coast, so the counting. So actually, the West Coast is where all the blue wall is, and that is a significant Democratic stronghold. So none of those votes have actually come in as yet. They've not been counted as yet. So it looks like a clean sweep for the Republicans currently, but Donald Trump has to reach the 270 number to be safely, elected as the president. Otherwise, there's still a chance for Kamala Harris. And this is the current situation, 207. This is as per the Reuters, 207 for Trump and 91 for Harris. There are a number of states to the left of to the right of your screen, to the left as you look at it, which, is still not counted. Amritpal Singh is with us. He's joining us from West Palm Beach in Florida. Amrit, of course, the mood in Florida must be pretty, upbeat right now because, if these trends continue, and the projections continue, then Donald Trump is, just a few steps away from reaching his, his second term.
Yes, Mark, you're right. The mood is upbeat because they're trying to project these numbers as a victory for Donald Trump. Anybody who would put a cursory glance at them would believe that Donald Trump is inching towards victory. But you have to look close enough. The devil is in the detail, and I'm sure the strategist sitting behind me in that beach house of Donald Trump, which is also the Republican headquarters at the moment, those strategists know very well for themselves that victory the picture is still not clear. And I'll explain why I say that. The numbers that you say vary from 242 to 207 and 270 needed, but if you look close enough, they could be misleading. That is not to say that these projections are untrue. That is to say that the states where Democrats traditionally win, and they are big states like California, 54, it will drastically change the number once California votes, while California's trends are out. So it is yet the picture is still emerging. If you look at the states, most of them, none of the states have flipped. Traditionally they voted traditionally where they are. If I can go down to the states, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina projected red. They were always red. Vermont, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, traditionally Colorado, traditionally blue. None of the states have flipped. They continue to remain red, and the states that were blue continue to remain blue. Now that is why in this whole election, the swing states and the previous election, swing states are important. Now let's go at the swing states, and we'll understand what these numbers do not reflect the whole reality. Georgia, 90% vote counted. It's a swing state.
Right, and 51% is in Trump's favor as things stand.
3%, yes. So the lead over Kamala that he has is just about 3%. So it's neck and neck. I'm not saying in the rest 10% counting it will change. Looks Georgia is going to go red. Let's look at the other blue state, other swing state, I'm sorry.
Right.
North Carolina.
Right.
Trump again has a 3% lead with 86% vote counts. Too close to call. Could go the Trump way, but still too close to call.
Within the margin of error, yes. All right.
Because it is too close to call because of the margin error. You're right. Pennsylvania. Now Trump, this is your blue wall state, must win for Kamala Harris. Donald Trump has an advantage of 3% over 71% votes cast. 30%, remember, still have to come in. We don't know right now what counties these are based on. What we call the blue states. I was in Texas. It's called the red state.
Right.
But I was in Austin. I was in Houston. They're decidedly blue. They're decidedly blue. Cities
So were you in Atlanta? Were you in Atlanta as well?
What county? No, I wasn't in Atlanta.
Right,
Georgia, okay. I think Shubhendu was in Atlanta. Yes, Shubhendu was.
Right, okay.
I wasn't. I was in San Francisco.
But you were in Philadelphia, weren't you in Philadelphia? Were you in Philadelphia?
I was. I was.
Right, okay.
And, Philadelphia, the city is voting blue. Drive 10 miles out. I drove 10 miles. I went to the Bucks County. I went to the Montgomery County. You see Donald Trump and flags and cuttings and hoardings everywhere at house lawns, placards planted, decidedly red. So there is a difference. We still don't know what votes that these surveys are basing them on, these projections. But these projections with 90% vote count, unless it's like 3% or something, it's not going to change. But 3% is too close to call. So the American networks themselves are not calling these states. If you look at, so basically almost all the states, the swing states that have been counted, Wisconsin, Trump has just a 2% lead with 60% of the votes counted. So clearly what I'm trying to say here is that if you read the trends of the swing states, which are going to decide who the next president of the United States of America is. Okay, Arizona, 50% votes counted, Trump's lead 1%.
It's very minor, yeah, it's a very small
Could very
amount.
well change. So,
0.1%.
It is the election is not over. The overall electors numbers could be misleading, and the guys sitting in Mar-a-Lago really know that. The messaging for their voters they may be doing or their supporters may be doing, that we are getting back to the White House? Mark.
Sure, but given the fact that these leads are holding for some time, one usually predicts based on that. Of course, the networks are not calling them because the leads are not big enough, but they continue to hold. The chances are that, these will remain red. In that case, then Donald Trump is through, isn't it?
I don't know that. I really don't know the answer to that, because the lead is so close. I'm talking about the swing states here. The lead, Trump is leading. Yes, it continues. No, it's not holding. It's going up and down. About an hour back, Kamala was leading in Pennsylvania. Now Trump is ahead. Arizona again is too close to call. Now, remember, this is what is being counted is the in-person voting. There is about 82 million votes that have been cast in early voting. A sizable chunk of that is mail-in votes. They open last because they have to be verified. It takes a while for them to be counted. So, which way those votes have gone will decide, will be decisive. So when it's that close to call, they have to wait for all votes to call in the election. You can call in the election where there is a decisive lead, where Kamala is leading in the blue states with 41%. You can discount the mail-in votes and say, if that's the trend, well, call in the state in favor of the Democrats. The same for the red. For the swing states, when the lead is so close, and as projected by pre-poll surveys, that it's neck and neck, it is really difficult to say. So I think right now the picture is still not clear. Who will sit in the Oval Office.
So you tell us that the mail-in voting, Amrit, is counted right at the end, is it? And what is the percentage of mail-in voting? Because it looks like, 88% of the votes have already been counted. So, or maybe all the rest of the votes are mail-in votes that are probably left to be counted.
No. What happens is that in early voting, there are two kinds of voting. One, in-person voting. The other is the mail-in voting. So about 82 million votes were cast in early voting. We do not, though the breakup numbers are still not very clear because it's county-wise. They don't put out the numbers, but they broadly put out that these many are, this much vote has been cast. The mail-in, the general sense here is that about 40% of the 82% cast are mail-in votes. Now, when they open, because they open the last, second, they have to be verified, because it's like you receive an email on your ballot and you reply back. So there could be fraud, and that's what Donald Trump's been hinting at, without evidence though. So what they do is to prevent fraud on that, they verify that. That is a long process. Sometimes mail-in votes come in till about 12th November. The results come in by about 12th November. So it is a while before the mail-in votes, final results come in. Now mail-in votes, if you have a 40% lead in the in-person voting, then you can discount the mail-in vote and saying it's not going to reverse the trend. So it's easy to call in the state. But if it's 1%, 2%, 3%, mail-in votes will make all the difference. So that is why I'm insisting that the picture is still not clear.
Absolutely, and in fact, during the course of our conversation, during the course of our conversation, Amritpal, we can see that now the blue states on the left have started to be counted, and they've already been declared blue by some of the networks. So Kamala Harris has moved to 153 to Donald Trump's 211. So the gap is closing. And we're going to take a short break, but stay with us, Amrit. We'll be back with you.
Who will be the next president of the US? America decides. DD India reports from Ground Zero.
An election on razor's edge. From the economy to democracy, the stakes can't get any higher. It's Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump.
Watch Race to the White House as the finish line approaches. Live and exclusive coverage only on DD India.
This week on Defense Dynamics, we will talk about the most recent events in the Middle East as the United States sends additional forces in response to the escalation of conflict between Iran and Israel. We will talk about B-52 bombers and tell you how they could impact upon the ongoing Israel-Iran tensions, and also how the United States military presence is altering the region's security dynamics. We will showcase India's latest success story of self-reliance in defense technology, creating international buzz, the wheeled armored personnel carriers. Watch Defense Dynamics every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Who will be the next president of the US? America decides. DD India reports from Ground Zero.
An election on razor's edge. From the economy to democracy, the stakes can't get any higher. It's Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump.
Watch Race to the White House as the finish line approaches. Live and exclusive coverage only on DD India.
Well, you're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn, and Amritpal Singh is still with us from West Palm Beach in Florida. Amrit, there are just two states now, I think, that are on the map that have not shown any results as yet. One is Alaska and the other is Nevada. And, in both these cases, perhaps one can say that they are basically red states. So they only account for 9 electoral college votes totally. So it is a very tight race when one looks at it. And given the fact that we've been talking about the other trends, which are pretty close, though some of those which have not been called, one can see that, the Republicans are way ahead. There seems to be the momentum that Trump began with seems to be continuing.
Mark, one slight correction with due respect. Nevada is a swing state. It's not a red state. Okay. Sorry, I lost you on the other.
No, I was saying, yeah, fine. Yeah. But since Arizona is looking red this time, of course, it's as close as ever. The one usually sees these two states voting on similar patterns, Arizona and Nevada. And of course, many of the pollsters seem to have suggested that they would go red. Of course, Alaska is red, right? Alaska is red.
Alaska is red. That's right. Alaska is red.
Right. Right. So, I mean, what do you see the pathway then for either side to reach the magic figure?
I think, once the big states complete their counting, like California.
California has already been declared, even though, I mean, they hardly have any counting, but it's already been declared for Harris because the lead is enough.
California has been declared. Okay. It's been projected. Yes,
it's been projected. Yeah.
You're right. So that changes the numbers. I think finally it'll boil down to the swing states. Right now, swing states are too close to call. Once the swing states come in, then the picture would be clearer. But right now, Donald Trump has a slight lead in most of the swing states. It's very important for Kamala to win the blue wall of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which doesn't look like Pennsylvania. Let me look. Trump has a 3% lead with 75%, not looking like going Kamala's way. Michigan, Trump has a 5% lead, so it's just 30%.
No, Michigan is where Kamala Harris is ahead, as far as the figures I have, unless that's changed. In Michigan, in Minnesota, Trump is leading.
I mean, okay, we are looking at different networks because these
Perhaps,
are projections by different networks.
Sure.
The network that I am looking at, and which is a pretty conservative network in the sense that they do due diligence, and that's why, I mean, I'm also looking at other networks. Michigan, what I have in front of me, a 6% lead for Donald Trump with 31% votes counted.
Okay.
Again, these are projections. These are projections. So different networks can vary. So right now, because there are no official figures, there is nothing like an Election Commission of India, a federal body that conducts. These are counties which have their own state boards, and they put out numbers. They put out trends. Networks post correspondence there. Based on that, based on certain permutations and combinations that they do. Like a Duckworth-Lewis formulas that they have devised for themselves over the years. These are reputed networks, and generally their projections are they're very cautious with. That's why none of the networks are calling they're calling the swing states because it's too close to call. So right now, what it looks like, Mark, is that Donald Trump has a slight edge in most, if not all, of the swing states. But they are too close to call. It could change as well. For Kamala, as I was saying, the blue wall is really, really important. She needs to take Penn State. She needs to take Michigan. She needs to take Wisconsin if she wants to make her way to the White House. Couple of hours, perhaps we'll be more informed. The picture would be much clearer whether it's her or Donald Trump.
Right, absolutely. Thanks, Amrit, for joining us for the moment. Let's turn to Anil Thomas, who's also with us. He's joining us from the newsroom. Anil, you're one who's following the stock markets, and they were enthused in the U.S. Because of the results to start with. I mean, what the better, those who were betting also seem to have suggested 52% or 57% in favor of Donald Trump, as against 42 for Harris. Do you think, I mean, those who were putting their money on Trump would be satisfied at the current state of things?
Good morning, Mark. Well, it looks very much likely, Mark, that people banking on Trump to pull this elections off are in a happy frame of mind. But having said that, the 7 swing states, we still haven't seen much of movement there. But early indications indicate that Trump is in a comfortable position. Last time around in 2020, Joe Biden and his campaign, the Democrats team managed to pull 6 out of the 7 in their favor. Trump managed to just win 1 in North Carolina. This time around, the battle is much head-to-head and much closer. The early indications that we've got from most of these counties, it's most of these swing states, it's very much close. Not much of a difference, and I think Wisconsin will be the deciding factor. And the 3 states that the Democrats would be very closely watching is Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, for the simple reason they are blue wall states. If Kamala Harris manages to retain that close to 19 seats in Pennsylvania, 15 seats in Michigan, and 10 seats in Wisconsin. So put that all together, and Wisconsin for the last 2 times has been the swing state that's helped somebody reach the White House. In 2016, it helped Joe Biden reach the White House. In 2016, it helped Donald Trump reach the White House. 2020, Joe Biden reached the White House. So clearly, that's going to be the swing state that all would be looking forward to. But there were bomb threats or security fears that were raised, especially in 4 of the swing states. So precautions being taken, but we'll have to still wait for numbers to come. But as things stand, none of the states where there were expected some kind of change to happen have not happened. The blue has gone with the blue, the red is with the red. So we'll wait for the swing states to come into play, and that's where this action could unfold. But remember, the 3 states that I mentioned, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, clearly could be a make or break for Kamala Harris and her team and the Democrats.
Right, Anil, last time too, Donald Trump had set up a pretty good lead. In fact, he declared that he was the winner early. And then, of course, there was the mail-in and the early voting that hadn't even been counted as that. and we saw that, you know, there was a come from behind win by Biden. This may not be the case this time round because, you know, perhaps the numbers of the percentage of votes counted seems to be pretty high in most of these states, and they seem to be progressing in the same without changing trends. So, I mean, how do you view the situation this time round? I mean, according to Amrit, many of the mail-in ballots have still not been counted, and those are the ballots that generally favor the Democrats.
Well, I would go with Amrita purely on that point for the simple reason that Pennsylvania in 2020 took almost 4 days for the results to come, and this time around also with the threats, the security threats that have been faced, especially in Arizona, Georgia, along with Pennsylvania, clearly things, though they might look very straight and simple, but I think we still are a long away from getting those results. So people anticipating results maybe by the end of the day will have a long night ahead and maybe a day or two to add before we get the final clear picture. But those 3 states could be very crucial for the Kamala Harris team along with the Democrats, and they would be looking to make great inroads. But as things stand, not much of a lead that the Democrats have managed to open. They have a 1% lead, which I can say can help them go the distance if they can maintain that momentum. But, Donald Trump and the Republicans can surely do a catch-up. But this could all go down to the wire. Yes, last time around, you can almost see a similar kind of trend to what we saw last time. But maybe this time, a day or two earlier, the final results could be out.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Anil Thomas, for being with us from the newsroom. Now, stocks extended gains, treasury yields jumped while the dollar hit the highest since July as early returns bolstered trades that have for months risen with Donald Trump's election prospects. With polls closed in more than 2/3 of the states, S&P 500 futures, it was up almost 1%. The U.S. 10-year yields, they also rose about 12 basis points to a 4-month high of 4.39%. The Bitcoin also rallied 3%, and also moves that together they bear the imprint of trades linked with a possible Republican victory. Now, while results were still being collected and polls remained open in 9 states, the ex-president's odds of election were climbing on betting markets and on the national forecasting sites such as Decision Desk HQ. While equities in Japan and Australia climbed, shares in Hong Kong slipped. The Mexican peso also dropped 2%, and the Japanese yen slid 1%. As votes come in, the market is increasingly confident that Trump will win and return to the White House. And it's a consistent picture in the bonds market as well, the US dollar and equity futures. One of the clearest illustrations is the Bitcoin, which has touched $75,000 for the first time ever, in fact. The world's largest crypto rose to $74,718 on the day, beating its previous March all-time high of $73,780. Now, Bitcoin is now up more than 9% over the last 24 hours. It has more than doubled in price in the last 12 months. Well, buzzing music, grooving youth, and the streets dipped in vibrant colors, the election enthusiasm among first-time voters in the United States has filled all the corners of the country as they celebrate exercising their mandate for the first time in the most intriguing elections in recent history. The contest reflects a deeply polarized nation whose divisions have only grown starker during a fiercely competitive race. Trump has employed increasingly dark and apocalyptic rhetoric on the campaign trail. Harris has urged Americans to come together while also warning that a second Trump term would threaten the very underpinnings of American democracy. Well, that's all we have for the moment, but my colleague Gautam Roy will be here in a little while to take this forward. Do stay with us.